the meantime, I think I notice an article a week where someone is talking about soft skills. What are soft skills? Why they're so badly needed? How we should maybe even teach soft skills over what we teach in school exams, because that's something that we're desperately going to need. I saw a story this morning that was shared with us by Hal Anderson about how people talk about Generation Z or Z, however you want to say it. The next generation coming up, the ones that are in the workforce, entering the workforce now, that's where they kind of struggle. Gary Bernier is the president of Soft Skills Expert Inc. and joins us now. Good afternoon, Gary.
Good afternoon.
So this is definitely in your wheelhouse, given the name of your company. I don't want to assume why you started it, but were you noticing something out there that people just were missing?
Well, when I started this back in 2007, I was the one hiring people and wondering why they did the things the way they did, and why they just, the common term is, why wouldn't they have that common sense? Why didn't they, just do that differently? And that's why I got into all the different personality assessments and all the other tools that I could find to help people develop their broader skill set in that soft skills area to improve communications.
So that was before COVID, before we were behind more screens, before we were separated, before we spent all our times on our phones. I mean, yes, of course, there was the BlackBerry back then and the incarnation of the iPhone, and so much more has changed even since then. So what have you noticed now compared to what you were even seeing back then?
Well, you just said humans have more ways to communicate than ever humanly possible. And everybody that hires me starts with, we have a failure to communicate. So technology isn't necessarily making the communication better. As the message shrinks down like texting, it's less information, so people are struggling more. Our Gen Z workers that are mentioned in the article coming into the workforce, they're used to using short forms to communicate with one another. And when they communicate that same way to somebody that's older in the workforce, they need the secret decoder ring. It's lingo that doesn't translate. The older generations just don't understand some of the newer short forms that the Gen Zs are using. And that's just one example of where we're having a communication conflict across the age groups.
I even noticed, I like to think my kids are pretty great, but because of technology and how they use it, they don't necessarily like using the phone is no longer the same way to pick up the phone and call someone. And you could even have someone of my age, mid-40s, admit that, I often text or email way more. And so that ability to make a cold call, to knock on the door to ask a question, to book a haircut without going online is no longer there for a lot of us. And we can't just push it on one generation, I don't think. And so for those that are listening out there, what do you mean when you say soft skills are waning?
We're not teaching people, and we until they get into the workforce, and some employers are better at this than others, of recognizing to be able to talk to somebody and say, this is a proper email. Because again, and this is when to use email, and this is when to use the phone. And, after 3 replies to email, go see the person, and just general guidelines for communication that they don't have when they come out of school. And that's been true of sort of every generation. We didn't necessarily have the proper etiquette for communicating at work. And so the workplace now has to provide that training to help people, as you say, choose when to text, when to email, when to phone, when to do in person.
It is teachable though, right? It's not this thing where some people just don't have it and will never learn it and can't figure it out.
Yes, it's absolutely a skill set that people can learn. That's all learned behavior. None of it came hardwired with us. All communication is learned behavior. So yes, it's totally teachable.
It's good to hear, because I think there's people out there that are nodding along with us right now because they either see it in their workplace, they might see it with their kids. Maclean's magazine had an article recently with a teacher who had worked in the Ontario school system for decades and say that it's also about critical thinking, right? Like they have access to more information than ever before. And therefore, instead of trying to stop and think what the answer might be, we just Google it.
There's that, and much as the AI is coming into play today, you still have to be able to ask a great question. And so being capable of forming and putting together a wonderful question to put in front of AI still requires intelligence. AI at this point is just going out to the library and pulling it back and giving you a summary. So it's the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you ask a bad question, you get a lousy answer. Yes, there's a number of skills that on the critical thinking that are necessary to leverage the technologies that we're deploying today.
Yeah, it's fascinating because there's all that fear too of AI, but maybe because of how it works, it can help teach us some of those soft skills. And it's all careers that are going to need it. So what's the number one thing? Is there a number one fix, like a quick fix you can give us for those out there who are nodding and thinking, yeah, this is me. I'm not so good at my soft skills.
Simple thing is have some patience for other people. We all communicate in our natural mode, especially when we're going fast. And so we're just trying to get through our day, get through our email, get through our texts, and answer back as quickly as possible to move on to the next thing. So when that lands in your inbox or shows up and it doesn't make sense or it's not fully flushed out, just have a little patience with the other person because they're not trying to offend you. They're just communicating in their natural mode in the fastest way possible for them. And that may not always work for you. You may have to respond back, but have that little bit of grace to say, hey, look, what I got didn't work for me. Can you please try again? Here's what I need from you. That's the thing that's causing the biggest rub is everybody has too much email, too much communication, and so we're all going too fast and not thinking enough about the other person.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're going to be put out of work anytime soon, Gary. So thanks for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That was Gary Bernier, president of Soft Skills Expert, Inc., talking about all the different articles that have been out there in recent days, weeks, months about, the fact that some of us really struggle with that side of our brain.